Welcome to Cast Your Bets, the Offshore Gaming Association podcast with your hosts Jim Quinn of OSGA.com and J.R. O'Donnell of Red Zone Sports. Let's get started.
Hello folks, welcome to Cast Your Bets. Super Bowl's in the books. Jim here from OSGA with my good friend JRO from Red Zone Sports and pregame.com. The Super Bowl NFL season wrap-up show here on Cast Your Bets. Looking forward to breaking down what we picked for you folks last week, how it went for us this season, and talk a little bit about the overall show. JRO, how was your weekend there with the Philadelphia Eagles cashing a big ticket for pretty much everybody else? No offense.
Well, I had New England here free, minus the 4.5. The better team won. My hat's off to Philadelphia. They were a team of destiny. What can you say about Nick Foles? Hey, I tell you when I win, I'm on the top of the mountain, but I also tell you when I lose. That's what transparency is all about. Congratulations, Philadelphia Eagles. You guys played a flawless game. New England had a couple holes, and certainly aren't going to complain about the pick. I had the New England Patriots as a big loser, and I'm going to come back strong again. Maybe a couple basketball picks coming up in the future.
Yeah, man. Yeah, I mean, it was a heck of a football game. I think it was one of those things where it was just Philly's time. After all these years, finally bringing a championship home to Philadelphia is a really, really, really big deal. And Brady didn't have his greatest game either. 40 years old, 20 games into the season. One of those things where just a better team won that day, I think. We did pick a bunch of prop bets for the football game, and we did very well on those. You had a couple of hot ones there, JR. I think we gave the listeners 10 prop bets. Overall went 7-3. You went 4-1, and a couple of them were way over. You had total pass attempts by Tom Brady, the Zach Ertz receptions, and you also nailed the team to record the first sack, but you were sweating that one out, man. I know you were because it was the fourth quarter. There was still no sacks.
Yeah, there was hardly any penalties and hardly any sacks. Almost a flawless game. But, hey, the props were there for a couple little entertainment. Nobody went crazy on the props. Hopefully people cashed it a little bit, but hopefully they stayed disciplined and just had a little fun with the props, because that's how you don't get beat up, if you play the props in a disciplined fashion.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And, I went 3-2. The one that I got burned on was I didn't think Foles was going to throw an interception. Then you had that tip play there near the end zone. But I did have LeGarrette Blount to score a touchdown for the Eagles, not the first touchdown. Gronk over 5 catches. He had 9. And the team to get the first penalty. There it was 8 minutes into the game, and I'm like high-fiving people at the party I'm at. And they're like, what? And I'm like, I just cashed the first penalty. And they're yeah, you're nuts. But it was a good time. Overall, JR, it was a good football season for you picking games here on the show. Hopefully the listeners were able to cash a bunch of your tickets, and I don't think you had anything in there that was really out of line where it was crazy. Overall, you went 20-14 during the regular season, and then 2-1 in the playoffs for a 22-15 record. That's 58% picking football games for over 20 weeks, man. Nice job there.
Yeah, thank you. They said the NFL is the sharpest lines. I certainly hope people listen when I say I work hard at this. 22-15, 58%. That doesn't sound like, crazy compared to these guys that scream and shout that hit 70%. And then you actually sign up with them. You can't believe you get tattooed. I went 22-15 documented, and hopefully I'll be back next year because I'll be raring to go and top that mark next year.
You only have to make right around 53% winning to cash tickets. But you also had some straight up winners in there. We also gave out some nice, leans, if you will, without actually making some picks there. And overall, I got to think that the listeners of Cast Your Bets here did very well. How'd you end up at the NFL season over at pregame.com?
Yeah, it was plus 20 units. I hit right around 58% also. Had a lot more volume plays, but I hit plus 20 units in the NFL, which, about 58%. I'm happy with that. Anybody that says they're more than that, obviously somebody does a fluke 1 or 2 seasons at 60%. But let me tell you, I work hard. I study. I do this day, night, 7 days a week, 24/7. The harder I work, the luckier I get. And believe me, 58%, I'll take it because a lot of people are getting crushed in the NFL.
Yeah, it's very tough to win consistently. And it's also very tough for players out there to wind up at the end of the season here, hopefully this week calling up or emailing or getting on chat with their sports book or their local guy, or going over to Vegas and cashing in some tickets they've been holding on to at the end of the year. It's something that we try to harp all year long. folks want to go back and listen to episodes of Cast Your Bets, they're available on Blueberry. They're available on iTunes and also out on YouTube if you search under OSGA Sports Betting. But we've been preaching to people all year, JR, about not just what to pick, but how to go about betting these games. I remember back weeks 1, 2, 3, we were hammering people about money management, and you're talking 58%, and people are like, 58%, but if you have true money management there, that's a winning season.
Yeah, 58% with money management, flat betting, not going crazy, doubling or tripling down with the losers and, going straight with the winners. If you do that, that's a recipe for disaster. You need to just flat bet them. You need to stay disciplined. A lot of times the best bet you make is the one that you don't make. You don't go crazy. Instead of 6 or 7 half bets, make 2 or 3 solid bets. Stay disciplined. The guys that win money are the ones that sit back and play a small volume. The guys that lose money are the ones that bet the 1 o'clock, the 4 o'clock, the 8 o'clock, and the Monday night games. Then they don't know what happened when they get tattooed right between the eyes.
Yeah, and it's not just in pro football; it's in college football too. One of the things we were talking about back about week 5 or 6 when the college football season started to get into some conference play was you can't just go and bet a team because they were good last year. You have to do a bunch of research there. I think that the listeners, if they go back and from this podcast, or if they were listening back in weeks 4, 5, and 6 when we were talking a little bit about college football there, maybe I can get some understanding that it's a different game. The lines are different. There's motivation. There's rivalries. There's things that don't exist in pro football. And I think a lot of times you find players making a mistake where, they're just blindly betting Notre Dame or they're just blindly betting USC. And we talked about that for a couple of weeks. And I know that's something you adhere to where you're looking at a lot of ugly games. I remember you had Appalachian State in there, and I think there was a Fresno State going on.
The uglier, the better. What happens is the lines makers concentrate on the marquee games, obviously the Big Ten, the Ohio States, the Florida States, the Clemsons. And what happens is the people bet those big games. What you want to do is you want to play a team that you never heard of with some under-the-line, under-script plays. The uglier, the better. I preach that all the time. They still pay the same amount no matter if the team is a Division 1A or obviously some of the ugly teams. They still pay the same amount. The uglier, the better. I preach that all the time.
Yeah, and it's very important for players to realize that it's not just an annual game where you're looking at the Trojans or the Bruins or Texas Tech from year to year. It's week to week. It's week to week in the NFL. We tried to bring you a lot of good topics this football season. And here we are, the end of the football season, a winning football season for picks on the show, and hopefully a winning football season for those listeners out there. Forecast your bets. Now, JRO, I know the Philadelphia Eagles, they're having a parade. They won the Super Bowl, but yet the Super Bowl betting odds for next year are already out at some places. I believe the Westgate's got them out in Vegas. I know a handful of places offshore, including the Greek, too. Looks like the New England Patriots are again the favorite to win the Super Bowl. And then depending upon where you look, you have either the Packers or the Eagles in second spot there. And then Steelers, Vikings, and the Rams. It's too early to bet these games, but I think it's a little bit of a slap there that the Eagles are still numero dos.
Well, they must have been listening to me on the podcast, obviously. And, I think there's a lot of indecision with the quarterbacks. Obviously, Foles and his perfect game. We don't know if they're going to pay him. We don't know if they're going to get a second-round draft choice. Carson Wentz leads the show. Carson Wentz was the man. It's North Dakota State. He was fine. And I think the Eagles have, as a team, obviously great offensive coordinator. Peterson makes some plays. But, Brady and Belichick, I told everybody, I'd rather take Brady and Belichick over Foles and Peterson. I was wrong. And let me tell you, we talked a little bit off the air, and without getting too babbly, the Green Bay Packers with Aaron Rodgers, if he would have been healthy, he was the man. He was absolute. They went in the tank so far down when he was out. It was unbelievable. But if he was playing, those Packers are a dynamite team.
Yeah, and he should be coming back fine because he got hurt early in the year. I know one of the question marks with Wentz is will he be playing in the first week of the season in the fall coming up for a run at Super Bowl 53. JRO, it looks like there's some other teams in here that I guess surprised us a little bit this year. Kind of far down the food chain are the Falcons, kind of far up the food chain are the Jags. The Raiders, the mighty Raiders, have dropped down to more than halfway down the list. The Houston Texans, who looked like they were going to do something this year, they had a quarterback injury too. What do we learn from this football season, JR?
defense wins with the Jacksonville Jaguars. And if I can toot my horn and go to the top of the mountain, one of my first NFL plays, if not my first NFL plays, was it takes a Jacksonville Jags team as a 6 or 7 point underdog. At halftime, they're up 28-7, 34-7. They made some noise. I love Jacksonville. It's easy to say now, but I love Jacksonville. And I know you and me both were watching that TV when they were up 28-7. They crushed the first week. New England gets beat by Kansas City the first week of the year. Obviously, Kansas City going, and they went in the tank. They lost 4, 5, 6 in a row. A lot of teams passed the eye test early, but Jacksonville and their defense wins. Minnesota and their defense wins. A la the Philadelphia Eagles smoked them, but defense wins, and the defense coordinators and that speed on the defense covers the number.
Yeah, and I think that's an important lesson. I think you were preaching that probably from the third week on of the podcast, that offense puts people in seats, defense wins championships. And, I think that's, although there was 1,100-plus yards scored, the Eagles' D came up big when it needed to. Patriots' defense didn't, and that was probably the difference in that football game. JR, it's one of those times a year where I personally take a little bit of a breath. I know you probably don't. You're probably still up at 3 o'clock in the morning, but football season is numero uno amongst bettors. By far the number one thing bet on. Over half the people right now, as we're talking, are probably withdrawing their money out of their sports book. It leads us to just about college basketball and pro basketball. I'm not a fan of the pro basketball betting. I know you're not. So we've got a college basketball coming up. And actually, we've got college basketball going on right now. It seems to me that you should be able to find some value there each and every week with some dogs. It's hard to pick a team that's going to end up number one. I mean, Nova's doing a great job there. But it's college basketball season, Jared. What do you look at this time of year heading into conference tournaments? It'll be a different animal, and we'll bring the podcast back out when the conference tournaments start here. But we're here at the end of this the stretch run towards the conference tournaments and March Madness. What do you look for?
Pure effort from college basketball. NBA, you do not get the effort, as it's hard to handicap when teams take off, when the $50 million players decide to take the night off. But college basketball, you get a pure effort. You really handicap the coaches. You handicap the travel schedule and conference play. A lot of teams are jostling now to make a name for the big dance. I go on the Lenardi list. I look at the first 4 teams out. I look at the last 4 teams in, and a lot of those teams there, you can bet your bottom dollar that if a lot of these teams are playing to impress the committee, they're going to really put the effort out. A lot of these teams, home underdogs. Kentucky is getting beat up pretty good. Missouri's a play-on team now. But look at the first 4 teams in and the first 4 teams out. That's when you want to look at conference play, because a lot of these coaches and players know they need to impress the committee, and that's the kind of team you want to play on. They're on the bubble. They want to be in the tournament, and they will do everything in the world for the effort to get in that tournament.
Yeah, I mean, you've got some real powerhouse teams that are just not playing up to snuff. Duke with 4 losses, Kansas with 5 losses. The Zags, who I like the Zags early in the season, they've got 4 losses. Purdue lighting it up with a 23-2 record. I didn't see that coming. I do think there's some cash to be made. And is it a time where you say to yourself, I'm going to do some studying and load up in the tournaments, or is it right now there's opportunity out there, JR?
I think there's not a lot of opportunity. Now, there's certainly some opportunity to make money, but there's not a lot of opportunity to go crazy right now because there's still a lot of funky things going on. There's injuries, there's travel. But once the conference tournament starts and a team has to win the tournament to get into the big dance, or a team has to do high in the tournament to get in the big dance, that's when you make some real value. 6th, 7th, and 8th seeds that need to make some noise. That's when you do your homework. I'm up at 2:30 instead of 3 o'clock in the morning with that. I love the college basketball, and I pride myself on doing well with my clients in the tournament.
Yeah, and it's nice, too, because they start some of the minor tournaments now or the week before the tournaments with the ACC and the Big East, the week before you have your MAC tournaments and some of your more mid-range with those mid-majors that are teams to really start watching. I really watch a lot during the conference tournaments, especially those off tournaments where it's not the power teams. Looking to see if I can pull up a Rhode Island or a Middle Tennessee or a Boise State, or a K-State even that might come out of somewhere. Is that the kind of thing you're looking at too? Are you planning during conference tournament play to bet for March Madness?
I'm planning to bet an individual game in the conference tournaments as the teams need to win, and the teams obviously against the spread. What's going to happen is some of these big power teams, now not the Dukes this year, but some of the Villanovas and this and that. Instant Villanova tonight is getting beat up a little bit. But what I'm trying to tell you is you want to look as individual marks. Let the tournament stand alone, and we'll cap that back on the podcast. Let the tournament stand alone once we get in there. But you want to cap some of these teams that are making a run for the tournament.
Yeah, that are making a run. That's the key right now. The words making a run, I think, are very important for the listeners to hear. We've got to the point of wrapping everything up for the season. I do want to talk briefly about the rush on payouts right now. On our chat lines, we've been very busy with folks who are already waiting a little bit. The best thing to do is stay patient. If you've been with a place for a while and they've been right by you, and here you are after the Super Bowl trying to get paid out after you deposited 25 weeks ago, I'm sure they'll be getting you their money. If they're around now, if they're one of the big dogs, if they're one of the places that we over at OSGA.com rate as elite, it's like money in the bank with one of those guys. You might just have to wait a little bit. But certainly you can contact us on our chat lines at OSGA.com or hit us up via email. Certainly be able to help you out with any problems or concerns you may have there. Now, JRO, it's 4 weeks until March Madness, 5 weeks till March Madness. It'd be good to see you out there on pregame, lighten it up a little bit before that happens. I'm sure you're going to be loading it up over there this weekend for plays for players.
Basketball and hockey, my friend, doing well on the ice, doing well in college basketball. I certainly would love to have some of the listeners come over and visit me. Just look for me, pregame.com. I'm up early. They say nobody works harder than JRO over at pregame. I'm one of the lead dogs over there. It's a super site. Visit me at pregame.com.
Well, that's about it for this football season. Not for this year because we're still early in 2018 and we've got March Madness on the horizon. But that wraps up the football season. I hope every listener out there to Cast Your Bets has managed to stick a few dollars in their pocket and learn a few things about how to bet these games. So next year you can do even better against the spread, straight up in your parlays and your teasers. Folks, thanks so much for listening. And I hope as we approach March Madness, you still get to cash a few tickets and stick some money in your pockets. Thanks for listening to Cast Your Bets.
You've been listening to Cast Your Bets, the Offshore Gaming Association podcast. Check in each week for more inside the sports gaming world. And don't forget to check us out on your favorite social media site and on our YouTube channel at OSGA Sports Betting. Thanks for listening.